Hello everyone and welcome to CyberPeace TV. My name is Aindri and I'm an analyst in the policy and advocacy wing. Today we have with us
that a lot of the content that we see today, most of the video content that we've debunked is actually AI manipulated content.
Ms. Pamposh Raina, who is an award-winning journalist and researcher.
Individuals who are producing content, they also need to be a little more responsible.
Who has over 2 decades of experience covering politics, governance and technology.
The kind of misinformation that we see today, it's misinformation on steroids.
She currently leads the deepfakes analysis unit at Ventor.
That lens is applied to something that may be absolutely legit, something that may be absolutely true.
Where she spearheads efforts to identify and counter AI-generated misinformation.
Pay attention to the supposed narrative that is being built. Don't blindly share it.
She is also a responsible AI fellow at the Stimson Center.
A trusted source in that sense. They assume if it's coming from person X, it must be true.
In today's conversation, we explore the rapidly evolving world of AI-generated misinformation and what governments, platforms, and citizens must do in this new reality. Welcome, ma'am. Thank you for being with us here today. And I'd like to start off by asking you about the work that you do and your journey, how it has been so far.
Thank you for having me, Aindri. It's a pleasure to be on your podcast. Wow, that question is going to take some time, but I'll try to be as brief as possible. So I have a background in journalism. I've spent a lot of years as a field reporter. I have worked with the New York Times, with AFP, and written for a bunch of international publications. And I'd say somewhere in 2018, there was a moment where I felt it was time to pivot in a certain direction. And that pivot got me looking at the intersection of journalism and other facets of it. Essentially, how people were gathering information, how people were understanding it, and how people were processing it. And it led me to take a deep dive into how misinformation was spreading. So from there on, I've been focusing a lot of my time and energy on projects that counter misinformation. And currently, I lead the deepfakes analysis unit at the Trusted Information Alliance. And my work lies at the intersection of AI and misinformation now. So the journey of being on the field, the journey of being a reporter, the journey of having the ability to tell stories also helped me develop a muscle around understanding how and why misinformation spreads and what perhaps can be done to counter it. And I see myself doing that every day now at the Deepfakes Analysis Unit, where we are constantly trying to gather trends. We are constantly trying to understand how synthetic media is being used by bad actors, how narratives and counter narratives are being built using artificial intelligence, and how it can be detrimental to the society and to people. So my work lies at that intersection where we are trying to figure out what should we do to counter it and how can we do that.
So when you lead the deepfakes analysis unit, what kind of misinformation have you seen being the most common, I would say, and on what platforms, or just what have your findings been?
So as I mentioned that, I've been in this space for a while now, and what I'd say that with the spread of AI, with AI tools becoming so easily available to people, the kind of misinformation that we see today, it's misinformation on steroids. And I say this because the tools are making it easier for people to create certain narratives that benefit them certain narratives that create a sense of panic and scare among people, because there are a lot of bad actors who benefit from all of that. Whether these are bad actors who are doing this for financial gains, whether these are bad actors who are also trying to create disinformation campaigns targeted at our country. So there are different aspects of what we see. So our work involves a lot of monitoring, media monitoring of content, and primarily we've been focusing a lot on video and audio content, with some focus also on imagery, because it's tougher to debunk AI generated misinformation, which is harmful and misleading, especially when you see it in video format or speech, AI voice. AI voice is essentially extremely challenging to debunk.
Yeah, I mean, from what I've noticed, at this point, you can't really look at a video and say that it is AI, because maybe a year ago we were saying look at the mouth or look at the shadows. But at this point, it's become virtually impossible. So, I mean, to detect through the naked eye. So, what kinds of techniques do you usually use to do that? And sorry, but how can we as users who are on the internet every day figure out whether content is real or fake?
So that's a very good question. And I'd also say that while technology is getting sophisticated each day, and you will have a lot of content that you see which seems better in terms of quality, when you talk about AI generated or AI manipulated videos. And I'll pause here, and I'll also want to tell whoever is watching that a lot of the content that we see today, most of the video content that we've debunked is actually AI manipulated content, as opposed to it being fully generated or us being able to call it deep fakes. The difference is essentially what we notice is a lot of real video content is being used, and the audio tracks of that content, I mean, I'm of course using plural here because we see multiple videos, but if you were to take the example of a single video, you take any video, if it features a politician, an actor, a senior military official, it might make you think that, oh, person X is saying something when they have not said it. What happens is that the video track is kept intact, but the audio track is changed, and the audio track is fully generated or synthetic. So that's what bad actors do. And this kind of doctoring is essentially what we would call as AI manipulated content, and not a deepfake. A deepfake is fully generated. So, to your point that what can a common person do, a common man, woman, what people can do, and why is it becoming difficult to discern between something that's synthetic and authentic, and some of the markers of manipulation or generation that were discernible previously through the naked eye aren't visible anymore? Of course, the short answer is there's a lot of sophistication, but I would also tell people that I think we still have to be a little more vigilant. We still have to push ourselves. We still have to ask ourselves that whatever person X is seemingly saying, is it true to their character? Have we seen a lot of videos of theirs or interviews of theirs where they have actually made comments to that tune? And I'm specifically talking about public figures, because they get targeted by such content. So I think the first check is that pay attention to what they are saying. Pay attention to the supposed narrative that is being built. Don't blindly share it. The second thing I'd also say is that while there is sophistication, you might still see some loopholes. You might still be able to see things like the teeth looking off. We still see that in videos, that, when somebody is apparently talking, in some frames, you might see that the teeth are not visible at all. And when the mouth seems open, it looks like there's a dark patch inside. Like, obviously there's manipulation that has happened, and because of that, you can't see the person's teeth. So they'll keep coming and going, they'll keep appearing and disappearing between frames. Sometimes you'll also see, if you pay attention, there'll be a certain elongation of, say, the chin. There'll be, if somebody has a beard, you'll see that suddenly the beard is getting elongated. And that happens because when manipulation happens, the bad actors they're boxing the mouth area. And they are using technology there to forcefully sync the mouth with the synthetic audio that they have generated. And when that happens, it also means that sometimes the natural movements will still be part of that doctored video. And you can also look at things like, does the lip movement seem a little odd? I'm not talking about the lip sync only, but sometimes, when somebody is talking and you force that synthetic audio to sit with the mouth movements, something will be off.
Right.
So those markers still exist. You only have to look for those things. Having said that, it's a trained eye that might be able to look at all those things. You still need a combination of, and I say this with a lot of heft, it has to be a combination of tools, detection tools, as well as manual analysis. It cannot be either or, right? So there are a lot of tools that are available, and it's a function of testing out which tool works better for which kind of media. There are some tools which are good with audio. There are some tools which are good with video. And the audio challenge is more, like I mentioned, because there is no corresponding visual with it.
Right.
So that, to me, if somebody were to ask me, when I look at this space, what is the bigger challenge? It's the audio challenge. It's where a lot of resources need to be poured in, solutions need to be thought about. And with a lot of these tools that are available, unfortunately, we don't have a lot of tools from the global south. We only are dependent on tools from the global north, because I think that's how the trajectory has been, that there's been a lot of focus on understanding synthetic media, research around synthetic media in the West. And as a result, a lot of tools have been produced there. But the tools are only as good as the data that they are trained on.
Yeah.
So those tools are not necessarily trained on the data from the global south. So sometimes the tools also hallucinate or give you results which don't make sense because they don't have a reference point. They will not have, say, voice samples in our regional languages. We have 22 official languages, right? So those are some of the gaps that exist. So all the more reason we don't need to blindly depend on tools, and we also need to develop a level of dexterity when we look at something and be like, okay, does it seem real? Does it seem fake? If you're not sure, bucket it. Don't forward it.
So, off the top of my head, two questions. Number one, when you're engaging with just audio content, what I found often helps is also figuring out the way the words are flowing, the language. Sometimes it is very obviously unnatural language. But then, which brings me to the second question, how much time do people really have to develop those skills? Because so you and I, we work in this sector, we are constantly on the lookout, and we're trying to figure out what's going on. So it's sort of, we've built that skill over some time. What about a person who has not really been thinking about these things or is not really completely aware about these things? For them, they're just like scrolling. How much time do you think or skill do you think it will take for people to be able to make that effort to discern? And if they don't, what happens then?
I think what you're saying is absolutely right, that there is a gap between what people are able to see and their ability to discern between what is synthetic and authentic, because it does not come to us naturally. We were always taught seeing is believing, right?
Yeah.
And now that fundamental notion is being challenged by AI. So what you just asked me also underscores or points to something that is missing in this landscape, which is AI literacy. There is a huge gap. You and I may have the privilege to spend time and understand this space. The problem is not everybody does. So while we are developing all these fancy tools for detection, we need to expend equal energy and more on AI literacy. Otherwise, all of this work is just going to sit in pockets while bad actors are at it. We are a country of 1.4 billion people. So with smartphone penetration being huge, everybody is trying to consume. For a lot of people, they consume content through their cell phones, through their smartphones, and there are no filters there. So if they don't have the skill, they might just be tempted to forward something that seems different, seems odd, and it is because of that curiosity they might just share it.
Yeah.
So there's a huge gap.
Which brings me to how is it that, let's say, okay, because you've seen how misinformation travels, what is it that makes something viral or something travel really fast? What makes people share things on social media or on group chats?
So I think first off, people share something because something catches their attention. That's one of the reasons, that it might seem new to them. It might seem different to them. It might confirm a bias that they may have. It might be in alignment with their thought process.
Yeah.
Second, they might have received that piece of content from somebody they trust. That is the biggest factor. A lot of content that gets shared across groups on closed messaging apps is because groups that we tend to be part of, say, family groups, etc., on closed messaging apps, or with friends, we'll have these groups. There is an assumption that this is a group where I can trust people. This is a group where people might be like-minded, so they're sharing something. And there is that ease of sharing. So people don't think twice. And if they're receiving something from a trusted source in that sense, they assume if it's coming from person X, it must be true.
Right.
The fact that closed messaging apps are by nature closed, end-to-end encryption, it also means that you never really understand what's going on in these groups. So tracking misinformation that spreads within these groups is very hard.
Right. And in India, it's also that apart from social media platforms, which are more public, we utilize private messaging groups a lot more. So WhatsApp, for example. And even in our personal lives, we've seen that those groups can be very active. They can be sharing a lot of information that may be just outrightly, blatantly false to, say, insightful or just generally harmful in how it is portraying some things or not portraying some things. Where do you see, is that a separate challenge that India has this different type of this? It's a mix of typologies and how misinformation spreads on different platforms. And again, you mentioned end-to-end encryption. Then there is a debate between privacy and security and safety. Where do you see that headed?
So I think, like I mentioned, that, when you talk about the misinformation landscape in India, and I underscore that, again, we are a country of 1.4 billion people, and the way people consume content, it varies. So platforms work a certain way, closed messaging apps work a certain way. Each has a separate function. I think they were initially set up, closed messaging apps were set up because people could communicate in small groups. People could communicate one-on-one. Conversations could be private. But with the advent of time, when the functionality of these messaging apps also improved, it allowed for a lot of sharing of content. So, unfortunately, there are certain controls that platforms who are behind these messaging, companies rather, who are behind these messaging apps, they have tried to exert some controls in terms of how many shares can go, in one click.
Right.
But the fundamental idea behind being able to share something one-on-one with someone or with a trusted group in that sense still exists, right?
Yeah.
So there is a certain functionality of these messaging apps. They cater to a vast majority of people. They bring that ease of, okay, I want to just stay connected to 5 friends. I want to speak to only 4 family members. I don't like the rest of them.
Yeah.
So, I will share information only with them. You can't control that.
Yeah.
As opposed to the open platforms for that matter. You may be able to see some stuff on your feed, but the fact is that's only the tip of the iceberg. There's a lot of stuff. What if you don't follow somebody? If they are not on your feed, what do you know is happening in that whole space?
Right.
Some accounts are private. If, you don't follow them, if they don't accept your request, you want to have information about, what their timeline looks like, and they don't want to share it with you. So I think there is merit to privacy, but it also sometimes in scenarios that I just talked about, it poses a challenge. So I think it's difficult to say what is right or what is wrong here.
It is. And it's heavily contextual, I suppose.
Yeah, absolutely.
So for things like CSAM,
absolutely.
A huge problem.
Absolutely.
Very difficult to break into people's accounts and figure out what's going on. And how do you know that that power is not going to be misused? So, okay. But that brings me to, because you have worked with these platforms, where do you see, in terms of the steps that are being taken or the actions that are being taken to deal with the problem of misinformation, where do you see this headed? But what has been your experience?
I think I don't represent any platform, so I can't speak for any platform, right? But what I can tell you is that I think there is a lot that platforms can do in terms of working with organizations or helping organizations who are working in this space of countering misinformation. And my project, for instance, we were seed funded by Meta, so we do have some working relationship with the platform in terms of us maintaining, say, lists of the most deepfaked people or...
Ooh, interesting.
Yeah, because that's the work that we do. So any report that the DAU publishes, we maintain a list. So whether it's a deepfake, whether it's AI manipulated content, and we make that list available to Meta. So that also offers a signal to them in terms of what, say, we are doing, because we are also a dedicated resource, a dedicated group, a niche organization in that sense. So I think creating setups like ours can be beneficial. Platforms working with setups like ours can also help them in a certain way, because platforms, I think, again, are navigating a lot. They have their own teams spread out. So, like I said, I don't represent a platform. I don't understand how a platform works internally. So I can't comment on that. Yeah. But I very strongly believe that with the kind of work that is happening in the countering misinformation space, and we've seen many examples that there is power in collaboration. this problem can only be addressed if there is collaboration between the different stakeholders. And in the information ecosystem, the consumers of this content, the platforms that allow you to host this content, and anyone in between, people who are, say, content producers, influencers, everybody needs to be a little more responsible.
Right.
Everybody needs to find that common ground in terms of identifying that, okay, we've produced a certain kind of content. If I'm going to release it on a public platform, does it follow certain checks? Right? Am I using anything in it that is synthetic, which can be harmful or misleading? Can I contextualize it maybe if I'm doing it for a purpose? Can I add any labels to it saying that, this is AI? So I think with this debate around whose responsibility it is, the short answer is it is everybody's responsibility. Because what we end up doing is we just end up nitpicking and we end up saying, we end up palming off responsibility. I think the day we as individuals start taking responsibility, we can tell the world, okay, we took these 10 steps in terms of trying to create an information ecosystem that should be more responsible. Please tell us, what did you do? Before you take those steps, you can't hold the other person, party, organization accountable. I don't think that's fair.
That's such a great point, because when we're speaking about this issue, we often talk about how to protect yourself. We're not really focusing on what you should be doing or should not be doing. I'm so glad that you brought that out. And for my final question, I just want to ask you, there was a time when if I came up to you and I said, hey, I killed a shark while I was scuba diving, and you'd say, oh really, show me proof, and I could, show you a picture and it would be proof. Can't really do that now. So one, yes, you can't trust everything, but how do you know what you can trust? So what is that doing to how we interact online, or how information travels online, whether or not we trust, say, platforms or influencers? What are we going to do about this?
I think unfortunately we have to develop a muscle of skepticism every time we see something. And it's an ongoing skill that you develop. It's an ongoing muscle that you develop, that don't believe everything you see. And take everything with a grain of salt. Like, one of the things that I often see, and coming back to something that we just spoke about, influencers, for example. I see a lot of people who say things, but there's not enough evidence to back it.
Yeah.
There is no sourcing.
Yeah.
There's absolutely a lot of confidence with which that information is being conveyed. But to me, the biggest challenge is that, okay, if you think you have a following of X number of people, 1 million followers, etc., you owe a certain responsibility to them. Mm-hmm. So, and I think we are circling back to what we just spoke about, that while we as individuals need to be a little more skeptical than before, individuals who are producing content, they also need to be a little more responsible.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
So, of course, trust is eroding. Of course, people are now not as confident of everything that they see and hear. Which kind of unfortunately becomes detrimental when something that is genuine, something that is legit needs to be conveyed. Because the same skepticism, the same distrust, that lens is applied to something that may be absolutely legit, something that may be absolutely true. So, I think we live in times where, unfortunately, reality is being manufactured. There is a lot of erosion of trust. All the more reason all of us need to work toward building a more responsible ecosystem. Information integrity is really the need of the hour, and each one of us needs to do our bit.
That was so well explained. Thank you so much, ma'am, for being here with us today. We hope you got a few takeaways from this conversation, and we'll see you next time. Thank you for being here, ma'am.
Thank you for having me.